Hey everyone, this is Salamander Anagram with reaktortutorials.com. If you like this tutorial, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We really would appreciate it. Today I'm going to be doing a quick tutorial on creating a Supersaw inspired oscillator in Reaktor. And to begin, let's just hear a quick sound sample of what we'll be making. Alright, so we can get some pretty rich sounds out of this. Basically what we're doing is creating several waveforms that are nearly identical and are slightly detuned by pitch or have slightly different phases. And we also have a knob to control the stereo spread. This design was pretty heavily inspired by the original Roland Supersaws, and I'm not going to make too much of an effort to fully recreate the Supersaw oscillator here because there's a lot of nuances and complications that make it unsuitable for a quick 10-minute tutorial. But nonetheless, this simplified version can give us a lot of great sounds, so let's get started. And I'm going to start from scratch with a new ensemble. And we can start by adding a new macro that is going to hold our spread routine, and the core of that is going to be fed by the voice info module. And we're going to be using the top output to kind of shape our detuning signals. So if we look at this to start, it's simply each voice has the value equal to its voice number. So the first voice is equal to 1, the second voice is equal to 2, etc. And we're going to use the second output as well, which is going to be the total number of voices in our project. And we can subtract 1 from each of those values. So the output of the top values are now 0 through 3 instead of 1 through 4. And we'll end up with a number of voices equal to 3 instead of the 4 that are actually in our project. And what we can do then is multiply the voice number by the reciprocal of the number of voices. So if we have a 4-voice project and subtract 1, we'll end up with 3. And when we take the reciprocal of 3, 1 divided by 3 is equal to 1/3 or 0.333. So when we multiply that together, we have our values that were originally ranging from 1 to 4. We subtracted 1, they range from 0 to 3. And we multiply them by 1/3, they now go from 0 to 1. And as you can see, they're evenly distributed within that range. So the next thing we want to do is to create a knob that we can use to control the depth of this spreading of our parameter. So let's create a knob. And we're going to multiply it by 2. And that will go into the bottom of the multiply module. We can add a new input to multiply all these values together by dragging a wire into the multiply module and holding down the control key. I think on Mac you can hold down the command key. So what's happening here is we're changing the range from 0 to 1 to 0 to 2. And then we're going to end up subtracting the value of the knob from that range. So we end up with the values that are coming out are going to be centered around 0. And that allows us, for example, if the incoming pitch is 60, we can have some values right below 60 and some values right above 60. And the overall effect will still be at a pitch of 60, but you'll have these oscillators that are slightly detuned from that. So let's just wire that all up and make sure it all works. I'm going to use a SAW sync module as a sound source. And we can add the output of the spread module macro that we just created to a note pitch. And that'll be our final pitch. And one thing that's important to remember is this is a monophonic effect that we're creating. Even though we're using a polyphonic structure, we want the MIDI handlers to be mono. So make sure to set the the note pitch to mono. And I'm just going to add a quick envelope here to make sure we don't get any nasty clipping sounds when we begin and release notes. And that can run directly into the amplitude input. And I'm also going to use the gate module to control the sync of the module. And we can run the output directly to the speakers. And make sure that you set your gate to mono as well. Okay, so that ends up being a little louder than I would like it to be, and the reason is we're triggering all 4 voices at once and adding them all together, and it just kind of ends up being a little more volume than we need. So what I'm going to do is simply divide the output by the number of voices, which is very simple, and it's just going to reduce our volume depending on how many voices we have in our ensemble. Alright, so that's how we can detune the pitch. And another cool effect we can get out of this is to change the phase of each individual oscillator. So we can just rename this knob phase, run it directly into the phase input. This effect sounds best when when all the pitches are the same. And you can hear when you start to detune the pitch as well, the effect on the phase is kind of lost just because they're not in phase anyway once they go out of pitch, so it doesn't really matter as much. And then finally we can add a simple stereo spread option. This is just going to spread the individual voices across the stereo spectrum and give you a wider, fuller effect. And it's very simple. We just are going to add a stereo pan module and then run one of the spread macros into the pan input. And that's it. Alright, this is Salamander Anagram with ReaktorTutorials.com. I hope you guys liked this tutorial. Please check out our website. We have bunches of written tutorials as well. Alright, have a good week.